Okay, who wants to listen to 9 minutes of funeral march music? Alright. Is Decisive Strike, rest in peace, press F for respects? I don't know. Normally, as you know, I would go through the whole list and say hello to everybody before I would get on with what I'm going to talk about today, but I'm just going to get right into it. And there wasn't a dev stream. There hasn't been a dev stream since last month, I don't think. So, I really was expecting one today. I even checked yesterday to see if they had updated their roadmap for what they had planned today, and they didn't. It wasn't until this morning that they changed their roadmap for what they had planned as a game developer event. And they said that they were going to make an announcement about the change to Decisive Strike, which came in the form of a forum post. I should probably add the link to the forum post in the description of the video after that. But let's see here. I'll just go ahead and we'll look at this together here. So, what do we got here? People of the Fog. Decisive Strike is one of Laurie Strode's unique perks, which was released with Chapter 2 Halloween in October of 2016. We introduced Decisive Strike as a perk option to help give survivors a second wind and an opportunity to escape their inevitable demise. Over the course of the last few years, Decisive Strike has been a point of contention amongst our community, and as a result, the perk has had an interesting journey since its inception. Decisive Strike has gone through some minor changes to arrive at its current state. Additionally, we have also prototyped entire reworks of the perk, some that we previously spoke of with the community, and ultimately most of these ideas were shelved as we felt that they did not retain the essence of the perk, nor did they provide an overall improvement to the current version. Whoops, not that. Identifying the community frustrations. To find a solution through which Decisive Strike would be valuable to our gameplay, we had to better understand our players' irritations towards the perk. Here is a summary of our findings. Up to 4 Decisive Strikes in a match. This perk can take a lot of the killer's time and completely break their momentum. In combination with other frustrations, this often comes back as a point of resentment for most killers who face a survivor team with Decisive Strike. Completely agree with this. Like, to have people like True Talent or Marth face 4 Decisive Strikes with a coordinated team, survive with friends on comms, is crippling. 4 decisives is just a lot for any killer to overcome. The risk reward, not much of a downside using this perk, yet a huge advantage when used successfully. This is true. Most of the obsession perks have a risk reward, a benefit, and a drawback. There's really no drawback to running Decisive Strike. Dribbling. This is when the killer intermittently drops the survivor to avoid the Decisive Strike killer. I've seen a lot of killers do this, dribbling the survivor to the hook to prevent them, like the count 1-2 seconds and drop them and just slowly drag them to the hook and hang them up, and they never get the chance to even use the Decisive Strike perk. Personally, I always liked it when somebody was getting dribbled, because those were extra seconds that the killer was using to give me a chance to finish a generator. But the trade-off for the killer was they're thinking, I'm spending these extra seconds to get this person hooked, but I'm not going to have to chase them again. I'm not going to give them the opportunity to get away. So I completely understood why they would dribble people. Obsessions. With only a handful of survivor obsession perks available, it was often clear when at least one survivor was running Decisive Strike. Killers would tend to actively avoid the obsession or alternatively tunnel the obsession, forcing them to burn the perk early in the match. I have been completely avoided when I was using Decisive Strike. I had a killer tell me at the end of the match, like, I thought you were better than that. I'm like, I didn't even use it, but they completely avoided me because they didn't want to have to deal with it. Obviously, they'd never seen me play because they would have known that when I run my Decisive Strike, I was like 50% at best, probably not even that high a percentage of hitting it. Normally, I don't run Decisive Strike right now. These changes don't mean anything to me. I'm not a Decisive Strike player. I don't really care. The only thing that I'm bummed about is that people aren't going to get dribbled anymore, and it's not going to give me those extra seconds to do gens. I did run Decisive Strike for a time when Marth came out with his D-Pip squad and showed how powerful the perk was and how it could be game-breaking. So I ran it myself for a couple of months just to see how devastating it could be, and then I just kind of moved away from it. But yeah, I've had a lot of people in post-game chat say to me, Paulie, I thought you were better than that, using that crutch perk. Yada, yada, yada. Alright, so the new and improved Decisive Strike looks like this. New and improved Decisive Strike. Using whatever is at hand, you stab your aggressor in an ultimate attempt to escape. After being unhooked or unhooking yourself, Decisive Strike will become active and usable for 60 seconds. When Decisive Strike is active, when grabbed by the killer, succeed a skill check to automatically escape the killer's grasp and stun the killer for 3 seconds. Succeeding or failing the Decisive Strike skill check will disable the perk. Successfully stunning the killer will result in you becoming the obsession, and there can only be one obsession per match. So what this means now is that you can't use your decisive until you've been hooked. Once you are unhooked, you will have a 60-second timer that will count down, which will give you a window in where you will be able to use the Decisive Strike if you are downed and picked up before that expires. So this is 60 seconds at Tier 3, as you point out, that it's 40 or 50 seconds at Tier 1 or Tier 2. Maximum of 60 seconds on this timer. Let's go back down into the next section, because I think that explains a little bit of the specifics here. Is this the right slide? Let me just check. Yeah. For the new iteration of Decisive Strike, we have introduced certain conditions and outcomes for using the perk while retaining the core concept of providing a second chance at survival for those who successfully use it. The trade-off for using Decisive Strike comes at the risk of suddenly becoming the killer's latest obsession. So you will trade roles with somebody. If somebody else in the game is the obsession, once you use the Decisive Strike successfully, you will become the obsession. The concept of changing the obsession while in a match is in progress, is something completely new to Dead by Daylight and sure to create some interesting situations, to say the least, when combined with other obsession perks. Okay. Your perk starts as inactive, the Decisive Strike meaning. Your perk starts as starts as inactive, no longer usable from the start of the match on the first down. As I said, you have to get hooked before you'll be able to use it. You need to either be unhooked by somebody else or unhook yourself with Deliverance or Kobeing to allow you to have your timer to use your Decisive Strike. The new condition: in any trial, any survivor that has the perk equipped can activate and use Decisive Strike if they meet the condition, being saved from the hook or unhooking themselves. Decisive Strike will only stay active for 40, 50, or 60 seconds, depending on the tier level of the perk, after being unhooked. This window of opportunity, laughter, haha, gives the survivor only a limited time frame in which to trigger the perk after escaping the hook. So I've heard people say this is like an anti-tunneling perk. It discourages the killer from tunneling you because you may have Decisive Strike. Well, that remains to be seen. We'll see what happens. Decisive Strike skill checks will trigger during the pickup. This decision was made to help avoid dribbling and reduce the amount of time wasted for the killer. The killer is no longer going to be able to dribble anybody to the hook. As soon as they start to pick you up, you're automatically going to get that skill check to hit it, and then once the pickup animation is completed, you'll be freed, assuming you hit the Decisive Strike skill check. The skill check area will be slightly larger to make it considerably more accessible to those who occasionally struggle with hitting skill checks. Raise his hand. So, I don't know how big, but hopefully it's going to be like a no-brainer to hit. Stunning the killer with Decisive Strike will result in the killer dropping the survivor. After successfully using Decisive Strike, you will immediately become the obsession. This will remove the obsession from any other player, and any perks that refer to the obsession will now refer to you, including dead people. So we'll get into the specifics of some of the perks later on in the day. About an hour and a half ago, they address some of the questions that people had on Twitter and regarding how different perks would work with this, and we'll get into that. So they finish it off with, we believe these changes should help enrich the player experience for both killers and survivors. We're excited to get your feedback regarding our new and improved Decisive Strike perk. These changes will be implemented in the next update. See you in the fog. So the next update is when the new chapter comes out. And let me see if I could show you this. Somebody who was eagle-eyed, let me unlock this, noted that down here at the bottom of the perk, you could see here that it says page 5. And there aren't 5 pages of perks right now. So there's going to be some new perks coming in. I wonder if there's actually any pictures of new perks in behind this. Hadn't thought to look at that. But since it's page 5, I think we can assume that this is going to come out with the next chapter, which should be fairly soon. And this change will come in with that. So that's your new and improved Decisive Strike. Alright, so then they did this Q&A. Can a player use more than one? Can a player use Decisive Strike more than one time per match? No. Do you lose the chance to use Decisive Strike if you aren't using it on the first carry? No, you do not. The perk is disabled only when you miss or succeed the Decisive Strike skill check. So what this means to me, I think I have this right, is that if either your timer expires before the killer downs you, or even if the killer does down you when your timer is active, let's say you get unhooked on your first hook when you're still in summoning phase, you haven't gone into struggle, you get picked up, the Decisive Strike skill check comes up, and you choose not to apply the Decisive Strike. You choose not to hit it. You just let the little wheel go around and you leave it. And you get hooked the second time. The way I'm reading this, it sounds like to me that you're able to keep that Decisive Strike because you did not attempt it. Then when you were unhooked again, you would get another timer. This part I'm not entirely clear on. I believe this is the way it's works from the way that I'm reading that it's written. That as long as you have not tried to attempt the skill check, you can't miss or succeed on it, so you are retaining the Decisive Strike. So you could potentially keep this and use it after your second hook to try and save yourself from death hook once you're picked up, as long as your timer's still going. So that's the way I read it. I may have that wrong. At first, when I first read it, before they did this Q&A, it made it sound like, to me, that decisive strikes were only going to happen after people were hooked the first time and unhooked. And then you'd never have anybody who was unhooked a second time have decisive. But that doesn't seem to be the case, reading into this. That you would be able to pocket your decisive for a future unhooking if you didn't attempt it. Does the timer continue when you're in the dying state or being healed? Yes, the timer acts like the timer from Make Your Choice or Will Make It, for example. When are these changes coming? These changes will be implemented in the next update. They'll be available in the next player test build as well. Now, I had the player test build pegged at coming in next Tuesday, which is, what, February 26th? The fact that we don't have a teaser for the next chapter maybe speaks volumes that the PTB isn't coming that soon. Don't know. I was really hoping that we were going to have a dev stream today, and they were going to clear some of that up and give us some information about when we could expect the next PTB, but it didn't happen, so I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. Okay, where am I at here on this list? Why shorten the killer stun? We'll be looking closely at the feedback and the interactions from the PTB to decide if we need to adjust the stun time on the killer. And then Decisive Strike change happened. How about some No One Escapes Death changes? We aren't planning to change NOED at the moment. We considered that NOED has multiple gameplay counters and is currently in a good place. We do not think of NOED as an equivalent to Decisive Strike. And I happen to agree with them on that. All right, next slide. How does the Decisive Strike change affect the other obsession perks? It increases your chance to become the obsession. So if you're running Decisive Strike and the killer has an obsession perk, you are still going to be most likely the person to be the obsession. I don't know if it's 100%. We'll have to see. If the killer isn't running any obsession perks, you will not be revealed to them as the obsession until you actually use Decisive Strike. So they won't be able to tell that you're running an obsession, that you're running Decisive, if they don't have any obsession perks. And a killer can only be obsessed with one survivor at a time. So it's like a great big game of hot potato where you pass around the obsession as people use Decisive Strike. Okay. How does this affect survivor perks? Decisive Strike, it transfers the obsession status to the Decisive Strike user when successfully triggered during a trial. So if you miss your decisive, you don't become the obsession. Sole survivor is no change. Object of obsession, only the person who is actively the obsession has the ability to see the killer at these max ranges. Next. Killer perks. Now this is where it gets interesting. Save the best for last. Play with your food. These really aren't any changes. It just is like whoever is the obsession, if you're hitting that person, you're going to lose tokens. If they become the obsession and then you hit them, you're going to lose tokens. It works the same, just as they pass the obsession around from person to person. All of the rules for every perk apply to whoever is the obsession at that time. Same with play with your food. I'm not going to bother to read that one. Now here's an interesting one. The Dying Light. Personally, I think that this Decisive Strike change is a nerf for Dying Light. The active obsession has the altruistic action speed bonuses when they are alive. If the active obsession is killed, the Dying Light debuff is applied to all the remaining survivors. However, if at some point during the trial another player becomes the obsession, the Dying Light debuff will be removed from all of the survivors as if the obsession is considered alive again. So it's like you have resurrected the obsession in the form of another survivor. So now you have to kill this person who is the new survivor to get your debuff back. So that's, to me, it's a nerf. The counter argument to that is, man, if my obsession is a super immersed Claudette and I haven't seen them all game, then this other random survivor who I've already hooked gets unhooked. I down them again. Then they stab me in the neck. Now they're the obsession. I've already hooked them at least once. And now they're the obsession, and I can potentially kill them to apply the dying light. So it kind of works both ways. We'll have to see, but I think on the whole, it's probably bad for dying light users. Alright, next we have the Remember Me. No matter who the active obsession is, hitting the obsession will add plus 5 seconds of exit gate opening time up to a maximum of 20, 25, or 30 additional seconds. All additional seconds are kept when the obsession is killed, and if the active obsession changes, the active obsession always ignores the extra door opening times. They are not affected by Remember Me. So if I've hit somebody 6 times as the obsession, got my max stacks of add 30 seconds, kill that person, and then I know that the remaining survivors are going to have to take an extra 30 seconds to open the gate, but then somebody stabs me in the neck and they're the obsession, that person is now able to open the doors fast. They are not affected by the Remember Me. And again, the other side of that is, well, okay, let's say I find my obsession early and they DC and I don't get many stacks of Remember Me, and then somebody stabs me and they become the obsession. I can get more stacks of Remember Me off this new person. So then that one kind of works both ways. So we'll have to see how that goes too. And finally, we have Rancor here for the killer perks that are affected. The active obsession will be revealed for 5, 4, or 3 seconds when a generator is completed. The non-obsessions, even the one that was recently the obsession, will have their locations revealed for 3 seconds after a generator is completed. Once all generators have been completed, the active obsession will be exposed and can be killed. This is true for any active obsession, which means that the Rancor Mori can potentially be used up to 4 times! That is crazy! If you had a team of D-Strike users, and then, like, I unhook you, and then that person stabs you, and they're the obsession. And then I Mori that one. That's crazy. I mean, it's a very specific set of circumstances. But you could go through the game with randoms. Somebody else is the obsession. They know that they're Rancor. You have Decisive. At the end of the game, you get unhooked. You use your Decisive. You're the obsession. You don't even know. Well, I guess you would know that you're the Rancor because it would come up as exposed as soon as you stabbed them and became obsession. But you would have no advance warning that there was even a Rancor in the game. So that one's kind of scary. But, you know, as people pointed out, there has to be a risk-reward for Decisive. And up to this point, it was always like, hey, if I hit this, I get away with no downsides. So that would be one of the downsides to being the obsession and running Decisive Strike and having the Rancor flipped on you. And then finally, they just talk about these 2 killer add-ons. And obviously, everything applies normally. The entire game plays normally with every perk and add-on based on who is the obsession at the time as it's passed around. So for Judas Journal, you're obviously only going to get more stock points per second on whoever is the obsession at that given time. And for Black Box, only active at the start of the match, and it's not going to reactivate when the obsession changes. That's for Freddy, right? Where you start the game in the dream world. So if it changes obsession, you aren't suddenly going to become asleep. So that's it. So that's what we've got. Those are the changes. I do feel like there had to be something done for Decisive. We'll have to see how this plays out. I mean, that's why we have the PTB. That's why they want to test stuff. So we'll see how it shakes out here. Which one's the logo? Boop. There we go. We'll have to see how it turns out. I don't know what you all think. I do have a couple questions about it, like how this is going to work in concert with Borrow Time, for example. So if I come up and you're running Decisive, and I come up and unhook you within the killer's terror radius, and you have borrowed time, your timer's ticking as soon as your feet hit the ground, and then you're running away, you get hit, you have borrowed time. Depending on how long the chase can go, you might not even have Decisive Strike anymore. By the time the killer would down you, your Decisive might be completely gone. That's a concern I have. The only concern I have about this is I think the timer is a little low. Between 40 to 60 seconds, I think is a little low. I would like to see it extended a bit more, because even at the 60-second mark, I unhook somebody, their feet hit the ground, I start healing them. Let's say I'm like 15 seconds into the heal, then the killer shows up, then they have to chase. I don't complete the heal. They chase the survivor that I unhooked. Their timer's ticking away. They might have like maybe 30 seconds left on their timer by the time they get downed. Then the killer could make the conscious choice to, just in case you have DS, I'm going to leave you there for 30 seconds. No different than dribbling, really, for the time, a little more time taken, but it's still a strategic move to try and avoid the Decisive, and you could wait for the timer to run out and then hook them. So I think the timer is a little short. I'd like to see the timer lengthen. That's really the only complaint I have about this. I don't run Decisive. It doesn't mean anything to me. I think the vast majority of killers are very happy to see this change. I have read some killers who aren't in favor of it, that they didn't even think Decisive was a problem, and they think that this potentially makes it a buff. I don't think that. You guys let me know what you think, but we'll see how it shakes out. I expect by the middle of March, for sure, we're going to see the new chapter in some form, whether it's PTB or full release. So I do think the slugging is something to be concerned with, and waiting out the timer seems like an easy strategy for me. We'll have to see what people do with it. I've seen some people say there's no way this is going into the game, that there's going to be an uproar and there's no way it's going in, but it's in the next patch. So it's going in. Whether it gets reverted or not remains to be seen. Y'all let me know what you think. Let's see what everybody's saying here in the chat now. I'm not sure why they don't just let you be able to use Decisive as long as you have been hooked once. So you mean like without a timer, just on command without a timer? I don't really use Decisive, but this seems interesting. They should buff Boil Over. Yeah. I think the timer should stop when you're down. That's an interesting point. When's that PTB though? I wish I knew. So does it show the obsession if you hit someone with save the best? I mean, you're always going to be able to see who the obsession is when it moves around. Caleb, I got nothing for you on the new chapter. No dev stream today. They're shutting us out. They're going radio silent. I don't know anything. They won't tell me anything because they're like, I know why Paulie doesn't work at Taco Bell, because he spills the beans. So they won't tell me. What happened to Dwight's cosmetic? These are all the things inquiring minds want to know. I have a feeling that they've extended the calendar another week, because I do know that there is a content creator council get-together at the behavior offices at the beginning of March. So it could be that they're waiting another week. Bicycle Dwight will come out on Wednesday. The PTB will come out at the beginning of March when the content creators are there, so that they can be hands-on to test the PTB and give direct feedback to the people at behavior. I think that's a high likelihood. So that would put the PTB release date at around March the 5th. And I have been told that the content creator meeting is happening sometime between the 4th and the 8th. So that seems to coincide. That makes the most sense to me, that they would have the content creators meet up there, test the PTB in-house when it's released to everybody, and they can get that direct, immediate feedback from the content creators themselves, rather than going through a lot of Reddit posts and stuff. They can hear from the people who have a lot of experience and hours in the game to identify whatever shortcomings there might be in the new chapter. What's the point of being a fog whisperer? I know, right, Jack? They gotta give me the goods. They gotta give me the goods so I can give something to you. This is the best I could do. I don't have any inside info. I love the change. The skill check will activate right when you're picked up, so you can't get hooked right away before you use your decisive. That's right. That's right. You should. I would assume as soon as the killer starts to pick you up, you'll be able to hit the skill check if you so choose, and then if you have hit it, once the pickup is completed, you would get dropped. But that's interesting for flashlight timing then, because if you're attempting your decisive, if you're attempting your decisive when you're getting picked up, people who are trying to flashlight save you wouldn't know if you're going to use your decisive, or I'll have to see how that works too. It also seems like Object of Obsession is nerfed, because if you start out as the Obsession and you use your decisive, but then someone else uses their decisive, then and you have that perk, you can't use it for the rest of the match. I mean, you can still use it, but it has a limited range, right? You still get it, but you wouldn't have the same range, right? See, otherwise it applies to a max range of 64 meters. So yeah, if somebody stole your obsession, oh, let's see, I have this blocking it. If somebody stole your obsession, you would be downgraded to 64 meter range to see the killer instead of 72. So it's not that big a deal. But I want to kill my obsession when the match starts, not 4 obsessions each game. I mean, are you running into 4 decisives? It's turning into an obsession trading card game, right? I think of it as like a game of hot potato. Here, you're the obsession now. No, you're the obsession. Could there be 4 obsessions per match? Yeah, like they said, that potentially with Rancor, if the exit gates are powered and everybody starts unhooking each other when and hitting decisive strikes on you, then you could Mori all 4 of them with Rancor. But that's a very specific set of circumstances. Hot potato, hot potato. Obsession roulette. When's it going to change? Whenever the next PTB comes out, it's going to be in there. I am not going to play the game on this stream, just talking about the perk change, Audrey. That's okay, I didn't take it that way. I'm going to go watch some television with my family, and I'll be back in 3 hours for the normal stream. So that's what I got for you on the Decisive. Dying Light Nerf. Yeah, I mean, that's probably the perk that's hit the hardest, is the Dying Light Nerf. I wonder how the killer can take advantage of the timer. You're gonna see killers with like stopwatches on their desks. They can count down to 60 seconds. Will Dying Light trigger multiple times if you kill multiple obsessions? Yep. So if I've killed the first obsession and Dying Light is on, somebody stabs me in the neck, now they're the new obsession. Now I have to kill them to get Dying Light to trigger again. Then if somebody else stabs me in the neck, they're the obsession. Yeah, over and over again. It's a pretty interesting one. Dying Light definitely hit the hardest in that. So, alright. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you in 3 hours. Have a great day. Bye.